Hello dear chess friends, this game was played by Adolf Anderssen. He was a magician and romantic of chess. Anderssen played black, Italian game, and we already know this variant from previous releases. Knight f6, d4, e takes d, c takes d, bishop b4 check, bishop d2, bishop takes d2, knight d2, d5, the central attack, e takes d, knight d5, short castling, rook e1, knight f4. Black wants to play actively on the king side by this move. Queen c2, queen f6. If knight takes d4, then queen e4, knight f3 check, knight f3, queen f6, rook d1. White pieces more active than black pieces. Therefore, Anderssen moved queen f6. Knight f1, mistake. Better queen e4. White thought that after knight f1, black will move knight takes d4. Knight d4, queen d4, rook d1, queen f6, knight e3, and white has a good active pieces too. But Anderssen moved knight takes g2, knight sacrifice, king takes g2, queen takes f3. If king takes f3, then knight takes d4, double attack. Therefore, king g1 was in the game. Knight takes d4, queen e4, b5, opening b7 square for bishop. Bishop d3, white threatens to checkmate black king. f5, king takes d4, bishop b7. White resigned because after bishop e4, bishop takes e4, rook e4, f takes e, black has a material advantage and wins the game. This move was played in 1942. Italian game opening. Short castling, knight f6 and d4. This move requires accurate playing from the black. Bishop d4, knight d4, knight d4, bishop g5. Black don't react to a bench and move short castling. f4, undermining e5 pawn, with threat to take d4 knight. Knight c6 is a passive move. Better d6, and after f takes c, d takes c, the knight stays on d4 square. But it was knight c6 in the game and knight c3. White is ahead of black in development. d6 and f5. White locks the c8 bishop on the initial square. Black should have checked with h6 move how white will play with bishop. But it was knight a5, mistake, and white sacrificed the bishop and got attack, knight d5. Knight takes c4, bishop takes f6, g takes f, queen g4 check, king h8, queen h4 with threat knight takes f6 and queen h7 checkmate. Rook g8, knight takes f6 and rook g7. After king g7, black resists longer. Let's see, rook f3, king f8, knight h7 check, king e8, knight f6 check, king f8, queen h6 check, king e7, knight takes g8, queen g8, rook g3, queen e8. King side of black is destroyed and white wins. After rook g7, black quickly loses. Let's see. Rook f3, c6, rook h3, queen b6 check, king h1, queen b2, queen takes h7 check, rook takes h7 and rook takes h7 checkmate. The game was played by white strongly. Remember the mistakes of the black and don't repeat them. To be continued. Next game was played in 1952. Bishop c5, short castling, knight f6, d3, d6. After sixth move of white bishop g5, black didn't move h6 and moved bishop g4, h3 and h5. Good move. Black sacrifices the bishop to opens h-file for attack. hg, hg, knight h2 and g3. Great move. f2 pawn is bound by bishop and the h2 knight under attack. Knight f3, mistake, and black ends the game with a beautiful combination. Knight g4, queen sacrifice. Bishop takes d8, bishop f2 check. Rook f2, g takes f, check. King f1, rook h1, check. King e2 and rook d1. Black threats to promote the f2 pawn to queen. Knight d2 and rook a1. Black has a material advantage and wins the game. Therefore, white resigned. Let's go back to move g3. How could white move instead knight f3? Certainly knight g4. And after knight takes g4 with queen sacrifice, white shouldn't take the queen, but must move queen takes g4 in this case. G takes f, rook f2, queen d7. The game is equal. I want to notice that if white takes the queen, bishop takes d8, it will be the same ending as in the game. Let's see. Bishop takes f2 check, rook f2, g takes f check, king f1, rook h1 check, king e2, rook d1, knight d2 and rook takes a1. Play carefully and win. See you. Hello dear chess friends. We have to analyze one more continuation in the Italian game opening. Let's do the moves d4, e takes d, c takes d, bishop b4 check, knight c3, knight takes c4, short castling, bishop c3, and d5. This is a variant based on the game 1970. What's happened there? Knight e5, b takes c, knight c4, queen d4, knight c d6, queen g7, queen f6. Black blocks the active queen of white. Queen f6, knight f6, and rook e1 check. the trap. Knight f e4 is the right way here. Black return extra piece and have a good position. Let's see. Knight d2, f5, f3, short castling. F takes e, knight e4, knight e4, f takes e4, and black plays on. But black moved king f8 in the game and got a tight position with unplayed pieces. Let's see. Bishop h6 check. King g8, rook e5 with threat rook g5 checkmate. The best move here is knight f e4 defending g5 square. Knight h4, b6, f3, bishop b7, f takes e4, f6. Black defends himself but gets a difficult position. Let's go back. After rook e5, black moved knight d e4 in the game. Mistake. And lost. Knight d2. Black cannot take the knight because rook g5 checkmate. Therefore d6, knight takes e4, d takes e, and knight takes f6 checkmate with knight and bishop. That's how this game ended. We finish analyzing the Italian game opening, but in the following videos we will explore the other openings. So subscribe, click on the bell, put like. See you!
Today we analyze next variant in the opening Italian game. Bishop c5, c3 with the idea d2, d4, bishop b6, d4 and queen e7. White moved d5 here, but there was a stronger variant knight g5 with the attack f7 square, and after knight h6, d5. Thus, it turns out that the knight is on the edge of the chessboard and the position of the white is better. Let's go back to the game. After the move queen e7, d5 followed. Knight d8 and bishop e2, freeing the way to c3 pawn. But there was more stronger to move by the bishop on the d3 square, defending e4 pawn. Also, white has another plan with movement of the a pawn. a4 and after a6, short castling, d6, a5. As a result, white gets more space for maneuver. Let's go back to the game. Black moved knight d8 and bishop e2 followed, d6 and h3. This move is a loss of temper. There was no need for it because a bishop's attack isn't so unpleasant for white. f5, black plays actively, and bishop g5. Knight f6, next knight d2 followed. Short castling, and mistake of white, knight h4. White had to make castling urgently. After the move knight h4, in the game, black moved f takes e. Black didn't notice a stronger move, bishop takes f2 check. After king takes f2, knight e4 check, knight takes e4, f takes e, king g1, queen takes g5. Black has a very strong attack. Queen e1, queen e3 check, king h2 and rook f2. White has a hard position. In the game, after the move knight h4, mistake of white, black moved f takes e. Black opened file f, arranging a cunning trap with this, and the final mistake of white followed knight takes e4. White could hold after the move g3, queen f7, bishop takes f6, queen takes f6 and knight e4. But after the move f takes e of black, white's mistake knight takes e4, leads to the great tactics. Queen sacrifice follows, knight takes e4. White took the queen, bishop e7, and after bishop takes f2 check, king f1, he got an amazing checkmate, knight g3. And now the task for individual solution. Move of white on the screen. Find the tactics. The answer you can see below in this video's description. Put like and subscribe. See you. This trap for black was proposed by Giacomo Greco. He was one of the strongest Italian chess players of the early 17th century. Italian game opening on the board: knight f6, rook e1, short castling, c3, queen e7, d4, e takes d, the trap. Bishop b6 better here. After e takes d, white can with move e5 bring a trouble to black. Knight g4. And here it is necessary for white to find correct continuation. For example, b4, bishop b6, bishop g5. If white take the pawn c takes d, the trap will shut. Knight takes d4, knight takes d4, queen h4. The king side of white is under attack. Knight f3, the final mistake. After bishop e3, white could hold the position. After knight f3, a magnificent tactic follows. Queen takes f2 check. King h1, queen g1 check, queen sacrifice. Knight takes g1 and knight f2 smothered checkmate. Great trap! Take it to the service and use in the blitz. Subscribe to the channel and watch our next videos. See you!
Hello dear chess friends, today we will analyze the game Marshall vs. Byrne that was played in 1905. Italian game opening on the chessboard. We know this variant with knight f6 move to our previous releases. d4, e takes d, c takes d, bishop b4 check. Marshall moved originally king f1. White loses castling to attack enemy king by the a1 rook. Better bishop d2 here. After king f1, knight takes e4 was in the game, with threat d5. d5, white saves the initiative. Knight e7, queen d4, double attack. Knight f6, bishop g5. Knight g6, knight d2, with idea knight e4. h6, rook e1 check. King f8, bishop d3, the trap. I noticed that d6 is a strong move here. The position of black after this move on the queen side is tight. So bishop d3 was in the game. Right way a5 or bishop takes d2 and black plays on. But it was bishop e7 mistake and white has an attack. Let's see, bishop takes g6, hg, knight e5. White attacks on weak white squares. F takes g, knight g6 check. King f7, rook takes e7 check. King takes g6, queen d3 check. King h6, h4. g4, h5, knight takes h5, queen f5. g6, queen f4 check, g5 and queen f6 checkmate. Very beautiful. Marshall was a great attack master. See you in the next issue. Hello dear chess friends, we will see in this issue how the Italian game opening was played by the first world chess champion Wilhelm Steinitz. We've already known this variant from previous releases. After d4, e takes d, c takes d, bishop b4 check, knight c3, knight takes e4. Short castling, bishop takes c3, b takes c. Black should to play d5 here. Of course, black cannot move knight takes c3, because queen e1 check, and black loses the knight. Therefore, d5 attack in the center. Steinitz played the trap here, moving bishop a3 and sacrifices c4 bishop. I will explain at the end of this video why he did it. White doesn't allow black to castling. Bishop e6, black is mistaken in response. It would be right to move bishop d3 for white, and after bishop a3, d takes c for black. Rook e1, f5. Black has a small advantage. Let's go back. After bishop e6, bishop b5 followed. The trap. Knight takes c3, black fell into the trap. Right way was knight d6, and black king could be castling. After knight c3, Steinitz did a beautiful tactical combination. Bishop c6 check. B takes c, queen c2, attacking c3 knight. Knight e4, queen c6 check, double attack. Bishop d7, queen d5, knight f6, rook e1 check. Bishop e6, rook takes e6, rook sacrifice. F takes e, queen e6 check, queen e7, and queen takes e7, checkmate. Great final. I want to note that Steinitz moved bishop a3 at the 10th step for this reason. It was simul game of chess. Not very strong chess player played against Steinitz, so he played very risky. See you in the next issue. We analyze a simple trap in this video, which may appear in the opening Italian game. Let's do the first moves. d3, d6. We studied the variant with move bishop g5 in the past video. Today we move bishop e3. Bishop b6, bishop takes b6, a takes b. Knight d2, short castling, rook e1, with idea to move knight f1. The game is equal. Knight h5, the trap. Black wants to move knight f4. White sees that he can win a pawn after knight takes e5. Knight e5, queen takes h5. But after bishop g4, white loses a queen. Such a simple trap can have appeared in a game that was played in 1941. Use it in your chess games. Subs to the channel. See you.
Today we consider the analysis of Gioacchino Greco. He was the strongest Italian chess player in the early 17th century. On the fifth move, Greco suggested to play short castling. This move is possible. Black moves d6 and d4, threatens to the bishop c5. Bishop b6, bishop g5, f6. Black protects and bishop h4. White offers black to play g7, g5. This move is also possible. It leads to the difficult struggle. Black moves g7, g5, and white sacrifices the knight. Knight takes g5. This sacrifice is quite correct. However, black has a small advantage after this. F takes g, queen h5. In this case, black should play accurate. For example, if black moves king f8, white has a strong attack after f4. E takes f, bishop takes g5. Queen g7, rook takes f4. Black cannot be saved in this. After queen h5, check, black should moves king d8. And after bishop takes g5, knight f6. The game, as we said, is quite complicated. Let's go back to the analysis after queen h5. If there is black plays not a very accurate to move king d7, bishop takes g5. It is better to play knight f6 for black in this position, and after queen h4, rook f8, with difficult fight. If after bishop takes g5 black response is queen g7, this is a mistake. Bishop e6 check continues. White entices the black king on the square e6. King takes e6 and queen e8 check. Knight g e7 and white checkmates the black king with pawn d4, d5. So, this is a very interesting analysis that we considered. Apply it in practical games. See you. Hello dear friends, in this video series about the Italian game, we will look at the main ideas, mistakes and pitfalls they may arise in this beginning. The Italian game is one of the most ancient openings which has been known since the end of the 15th century, and now, even in our time, it is found in top-level competitions. The Italian game begins with the move e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. And here one of the key points for white is the move c2, c3, in order to create a strong pawn center after d2, d4. We analyze today the game Schwarz vs. Hartlaub. It was played in 1918. There was played short castling, d6, h3 and h5. What is black intention? They prepare and bishop sacrifice on g4, and later, with the help of a queen and a rook, along the open file h, they can create an attack on white king, knight h2. White trying to defend themselves from this threat. But it is much better to move c3, and it doesn't bishop g4, because d4, ed, hg, hg, knight g5, and white has an advantage. Let's return to the game. Knight h2, knight f6, d3, bishop g4. This is a mistake too. Right way short castling. After bishop g4, hg followed, hg, knight takes g4, knight h5. And here, if white continued knight h6, they would refute black's plan. Gh, queen takes h5 with big advantage. But white went past this opportunity by playing bishop e3. Mistake. Queen h4. Black threatens slight tactics. And now even g3 move doesn't save white. Let's see. Knight takes g3, queen f3, bishop e3, fe, f5, ef, e4, queen g2, queen g4. Black has a strong attack and wins. Let's go back to the game. After queen h4, white moved bishop takes c5. And queen h1 check, queen sacrifice. King takes h1, knight g3 double check, king g1 and rook h1 checkmate. George's completion of this game. Like and subscribe to the channel and you will see many more interesting things. See you.
Hello dear chess friends, we consider the game in this issue that was played by Emanuel Schiffers and Max Harmonist in 1887. Schiffers received a prize for it as a most beautiful game at the international tournament in Frankfurt am Main. We've already known this variant in the Italian game opening by the previous videos. After bishop b4 check, bishop d2, bishop takes d2, knight d2, black moves d5. Black attacks into the center and frees the diagonal for the c8 bishop. E takes d, knight d5 and queen b3. Very strong attack move. Knight e7, short castling, and white moves rook e1. c6, a4. White prevents the move b5 of black. Queen c7, rook c1, the trap. White threatens to take the knight and win it. Black could hold the position with move queen b6. But in the game, black mistaked and moved knight f4. White has an attack on this case. Knight g5, knight g6, and rook e8, rook sacrifice. White could win with knight takes f7 at a6, queen a3, bishop f5, knight f3. But rook e8 is more beautiful. Rook takes e8, bishop f7 check, king h8, bishop takes e8, knight e2 check, king h1, knight takes c1. The queen under attack, knight f7 check, king g8, knight h6 double check, king f8, queen g8 check, king e7, bishop takes g6, hg. After gh, queen f7 check, king e6 and knight c4 checkmate. Therefore hg was in the game. Queen g7 check, king d8, queen f8 check, king d7 and knight e4, the silent move and black helpless. If knight d3, then queen g7 check, king d8, knight f7 check, king d7, knight g5 check, king d8, queen f8 check, king d7 and knight f6 checkmate. Therefore queen d8 was in the game. Queen d6 check, king e8, knight f6 check. Black resigned because queen takes f6, black loses the queen. White wins. Very beautiful game. Put like, subs to the channel. See you.
Everything started calmly in this blitz game. Italian game was played d3, d6, c3, h6, a4, a5, knight a3. Discussionally, it is safe or not safe c5 bishop, because it controls diagonal a7 g1 very well. But Carlsen has always played non-standard chess, and he moved bishop takes a3. Rook takes a3, short castling, rook e1, rook e8, h3, bishop e6, bishop b5. White is trying to keep their bishop, in contrast to black ones. Bishop d7, bishop e3, knight e7, bishop c4, knight g6. Black's plan with the transfer of the knight to g6 weakens the queen side, where white goes immediately. Quite possibly this is intentional weakening, as now the sharp game begins. Queen b3, bishop e6, bishop takes e6, rook takes e6, queen b7, rook b8, queen a6, rook takes b2, queen a5, d5. Opening the center, black quickly connects e6 rook to the defense of the queen side. Rook a1. On taking e takes d, knight d5 will follow, and black's problems are resolved, as they have all the active pieces. In the game it was rook a1, d takes e, queen c8, freeing the queen from the ligament. It doesn't knight takes e4, because bishop c1 double attack. So queen c8, knight d2, knight h5, knight c4, rook b8, rook b1, rook a1, queen c5, knight f4. Black is trying to organize an attack on the white king. Bishop takes f4, knight takes f4, knight takes e5, queen e8, knight f3, rook g6, queen f5. Rook takes e4 worse, because rook b4 and black forced to exchange one of the active pieces. White has the advantage on the queen side. Black is trying to organize counterplaying with rook g6 move, queen f5, knight takes g2, king h1, rook a6 mistake, which leads to defeat. Rook f6 kept the fight, queen e5, knight f4. After rook a6, e5 followed. This pawn movement disrupts the interaction of black pieces. Queen a8, rook b4, c5, rook e4, queen d5, c4, queen d3, rook g1, rook takes a4, e6. This move is stronger than rook takes g2, because after queen f1 check, rook g1, rook takes g1 check, knight takes g1, rook a1, queen c8 check, king h7, queen g4, queen takes f2, queen g2, black's pieces more active, and white needs f4 to win. After e6, everything ends quickly. Rook takes e6, knight e5, knight h4, queen f7 check. And black resigned, because if king h8 or king h7, then queen g7 checkmate. Subscribe to our channel and see World Chess Championship with us. See you!
Hello dear chess friends, we continue to analyze Italian game opening and traps in it. And in this video we will consider bishop b4 check knight c3 variant. White sacrifices the pawn to get an advantage in development. Knight takes e4, the main continuation here. Let's analyze one of the games of 1997 year. Short castling was in the game. This move is worse because white has an initiative, e5, knight e4, stronger d5 with counterattack. So knight e4, short castling, knight c3, b takes c, bishop takes c3, and knight g5, rook sacrifice. It was not too late to make a move d5, but black moved bishop takes a1 in the game, and white got a strong attack. Queen h5, threatening to checkmate on h7. h6, mistake. This natural move leads to defeat. Black should to move queen takes g5 and hold the position. After h6, white takes the f7 pawn, knight takes f7, rook takes f7, queen f7 check, king h8, and the final strike, bishop g5. If queen takes g5, then queen g8 checkmate, or if h takes g5, then queen h5 checkmate. This is how a game can end if black takes pieces without control and neglects his own pieces development. Subs to the channel, see you! This game was played in 1827, Italian game opening, and white moved c3 with idea d4, queen e7. More actively the move knight f6, queen e7 was in the game, d4, the center attack, and bishop b6, d5. More actively for white the move knight g5 with attack f7 pawn. So d5, knight d8, bishop e2, freeing c4 square for c3 pawn. d6 and h3. This move of white is a loss of temper. It is better to move a4 with idea a5 and attack b6 bishop. But it was h3 in the game and f5. Black tries to seize the initiative and counterattacks in the center, undermining pawn chain e4 d5. White moves bishop g5, knight f6, knight d2. White develops a piece and defends e4 pawn. Short castling, and white should castle here to defend f2 pawn and his king. But it wasn't in the game. Knight h4, mistake. The idea of this move is to attack the pawn f5 and create problems for the opponent. But with this move, white creates problems for themselves. F takes e4 follows. File f is opened. Black rook and bishop looks at the f2 pawn. White didn't notice the danger and moved knight takes e4, the final mistake. Knight takes e4 followed, queen sacrifice. If bishop takes e7, then bishop takes f2 check, king f1, and knight g3 checkmate. If white tries to defend the bishop with queen c1, then knight g5. Black has 2 extra pieces and he wins. Therefore, after knight takes e4, white resigned. Hello dear chess friends, we begin a series of videos about Italian game opening. We will analyze most relevant continuations, errors and traps. Italian game has been known for a long time. It was explored by Italian masters several countries ago, and the main idea of the opening is as follows. After e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, the modern continuation c3. White wants with d4 create the strong pawn center, and black wants to prevent it. Another variant short castling, d6, h3, h5. Black prepares bishop sacrifice on g4 square, opens h-file and attacks white king. Very strong here, c3, bishop g4, d4, e takes d, h takes g, h takes g, and knight g5. White has an advantage. If knight h2, then knight f6. Very good is the move g5 with pawn's attack. So knight f6, d3, bishop g4, hg, hg, knight takes g4, knight h5. Black queen wants to move on h4. The best for white is move knight h6, and after rook h6, bishop h6, queen h4, queen f3, preventing knight g3 move and attacking f7 square. White has an advantage here. Let's go back. If white does a natural move bishop e3, mistake, then queen h4. White loses the game. Bishop takes c5, queen h1 check, queen sacrifice. King takes h1, knight g3 check. King g1 and rook h1 checkmate. This amazing game was played in 1918. Subs to the channel to be continued. We continue to analyze actual variants, traps and tricks in the Italian game opening. And today we will look at an interesting game in which black after d4 should play very accurately. Bishop takes d4, knight d4, knight d4, bishop g5, binding the knight. h6, bishop h4, g5, f4. We saw and studied this option in past videos. This game was played in 1991. Here, black tried to strengthen the game by move knight takes e4. Let's see what happened. F takes e, attacking f7 square, knight e6, queen f3, queen e7 defending f7, queen e4, gh, knight c3. Black should move h3 in this position and get counterplaying. If white take the pawn, file g opens and white king loses cover. If white moves g3, weak white squares in the position formed. Black must use these circumstances and attack of him the white king. But in the game black moved rook b8 instead h3 and lost a tempo. White begins attack first. Let's see. Knight d5, queen g5, rook f5, queen g6, queen h4, threatening to checkmate on e7. Knight g5, rook takes f7, rook sacrifice. If king takes f7, then knight f4 check with win the queen. If queen takes f7, then knight takes c7 check. And if knight f7, then queen e7 checkmate. Therefore, rook takes f7 is a beautiful, unexpected tactical move. b5, knight f6 check, king d8, queen g4. White threatened to checkmate on d7 now. Knight f3 check, gf, queen g4, fg, bc. Black exchange the queens, but black's position has not improved. White continues the attack, e6, with threat e7 checkmate. If d takes e, then rook d1 check, bishop d7, rook d7 check, king c8, rook takes c8, c7 check, king d8 and rook d7 checkmate. Therefore, black didn't take the e6 pawn in the game, but moved rook e8. It seems that it is enough but white finishes the game with a beautiful tactical combination. e7 check. Rook takes e7, rook f8 check, rook e8 and rook takes e8 checkmate. Great finale. Let me remind that the game could have ended differently if black had played h3 in the 13th step. To be continued. Today we analyze the chess game of 1910. After the moves e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, black moved knight f6 with attack on e4 pawn. d4, white plays sharp. Knight c3 is more calmly. So d4, e takes d, short castling, bishop c5. This move gives white the opportunity to move the e-pawn forward, e5. Another possible sharp variant, knight takes e4, rook e1, d5 with mutual chances. Let's go back to move bishop c5. e5, d5, the strongest answer. E takes f, d takes c, rook e1 check. King f8, defending g7 pawn from taking. Bishop g5, with threat f takes g check and winning the queen. G takes f, bishop h6 check. King g8, knight d4. Good move. Black cannot take the knight with queen because of the weakness of the 8th rank. If queen takes d4, then rook e8 check, bishop f8 and rook takes f8 checkmate. Therefore, black moved bishop takes d4, c3 and bishop e6, the first mistake of black. Bishop e5 kept the tension. Queen takes d8 check, knight d8, f4. White gets back a piece and the game continues. What happens after bishop e6? C takes d, queen d4. If knight takes d4, then rook e4 and black loses a piece. f5, rook takes d4. Let's go back to the game. Queen takes d4. White moves queen h5, avoiding the exchange of queens. Knight e5, the second mistake of black. Black needed to redeem the white queen's activity on the king side. Queen g4. queen takes g4, bishop g4. But black's position is also difficult in this case. The h8 rook doesn't play. White gets a strong attack. Knight c3, f5, knight d5 with threat knight f6, checkmate. f6, freeing the f7 square for king, and rook e6. But let's go back to the game. It was knight e5 in the game, knight c3, queen g4. And now this move is a final mistake. Black threatens to move knight f3 check, but white sacrifices the rook effectively. Rook takes e5. F takes e and knight d5. The quiet but very strong move decides the game in favor of white. If queen h5, then knight f6, checkmate. If bishop d5, then queen takes g4, checkmate too. Black cannot defend f6 and e7 squares at the same time from invasion of knight. Therefore, after knight d5, black resigned.